Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Larry's Trackside Teaser, where I tease the upcoming NASCAR weekend. You're either watching live here on X, on YouTube, or you're listening on Spotify. I would appreciate a follow, subscribe, comments, whatever. Share it, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. As long as you listen. As long as you listen. Well, this week we got Circuit of the Americas. COTA, NASCAR is heading to Texas for a little Texas two-step. Austin, Texas is upcoming. But the trucks are also hitting St. Petersburg. St. Pete going to Florida to have a doubleheader weekend with IndyCar. I would also like to note the MX5 Cup Series is there this weekend. One of my personal favorite series outside of the NASCAR world. But let's get to it, start previewing the upcoming weekend. But right before we do that, I do want to go through my power rankings. This will be the first edition of the season of my NASCAR power rankings. I'll be doing this every week to start the show, going through what I think the top 5 power rankings in each of the 3 series are. This week, it's only going to be Cup. I'm doing it based off of the last 3 races, and O'Reilly and Trucks have only done 2. In the Cup Series, I counted Bowman Gray, the Daytona 500, and then, of course, Hot Lana for the Auto Trader 400 for my power ranking. So let's take a look at what my power rankings look like this week. No surprise at the top of the board, it has to be Tyler Reddick. Has 2 wins, winning Daytona and Atlanta. Didn't have as much success at Bowman Gray. For the Clash, has an average finish of 8th place after 3 races. Second in my power rankings might come as a bit of a surprise, and that will be Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez has started off this season fantastic. In a fantastic fashion, he started off this season, has an average finish of 7.33. Third on my power rankings is Ryan Preece, who's looked really strong to start the season, had the victory, of course, in the Clash. Fourth in my power rankings to start the year will be Chase Briscoe. I was thinking about putting him up a little bit higher because personally I thought he had the car to beat in the Daytona 500, but it didn't quite work out. So I have him 4th, an average finish of 14.66. And then Ryan Blaney, he started off the season pretty consistent, not a big surprise, has an average finish of 13.33 to start off the year. So next week, after St. Pete and COTA, we'll have the first edition of the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series Power Rankings and the Craftsman Truck Series. And then, of course, the Cup Series Power Rankings will be updated, and we'll see if any of these drivers make movements. I would assume after this week, we're going to get a couple of drivers moving in and a couple of drivers moving out of the NASCAR Power Rankings. All right, let's move on to now the schedule and the facts for the upcoming NASCAR weekend. We'll start with some facts for Circuit of the Americas. It's the Duramax Grand Prix this weekend at COTA in Austin, Texas. The stages end at lap 20 and lap 45, and it's a 95 lap race at COTA. It's almost 2.5 miles, 2.4 miles around Austin, Texas. It is a road course. It opened back up in 2012. It was originally built to be a Formula One circuit, and then NASCAR eventually did come here almost 10 years after it opened in 2021. A lot of you remember that race. It was full of rain. We had a bunch of gnarly crashes. A lot of people were debating after that race, would we ever even come back to Circuit of the Americas after the show it put on that weekend? Well, they did. They did come back later on. We've had some really great races, and that first race was won by Chase Elliott. We've had 5 races there, but we've had 5 different winners, and then last year's winner, I was at the race last year. I was heartbroken. Kyle Busch didn't take the dub, but Christopher Bell did win last year's event. The notable entries for this weekend for Trucks, O'Reilly, and Cup. In the Truck Series, of course, they're at St. Pete. You have Dario Franchitti driving the number 1 for Tricon. You'll actually have Jimmy Johnson as his crew chief as well, which is very interesting. Adam Andretti making his 2nd straight Truck Series start, also for Tricon in the number 5. Connor Mozak. I like to see Connor Mozak out there. I think he has a bunch of raw talent and he's a great road course racer, so it's good to see him out there racing for Spire. And then we have a blast from the past driving the Ram free agent car, well, truck, I should say, for Colleague Racing, and that is Colin Braun, who raced in NASCAR years ago for Roush in the Truck Series, ran a little bit in the Busch Series, is what it was called at the time back then as well. Ever since, he's been a big-time Trans Am racer and has had a lot of success. Then we have the young driver of Landon Lewis and the number 45 for Nice Motorsports. I'm very interested to see how he's going to do. I think he's one of the better young prospects in the NASCAR world right now. And then we have Hinchtown, James Hinchcliffe, driving the number 77 for Spire Motorsports. I love James Hinchcliffe, Hinchtown. He's awesome. It's going to be really great seeing him out there. And then we'll move on to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, where we're going to have another duel. We're going to have Connor Zilic in the number 1, and we're going to have Shane Van Gisbergen in the number 9 this weekend at COTA. It's going to be great watching those two. I think they're going to compete for both the O'Reilly Series and the Cup Series win this weekend. In the number 19, we have the young driver of Brent Cruz, who probably is the best under 18 prospect right now. From this point forward, I think he's racing the rest of the races this season, because I think he is turning 18 here very soon, and he's able to race the next couple of races with the new change in rules for 17 or older to race in the O'Reilly Series, other than obviously super speedways and stuff like that. Then we have Sage Karam. Sage Karam, open wheel racer, has raced a bunch over here in NASCAR at this point. I'm interested to see how he's going to do driving the number 55. And I'm very surprised we don't have a lot of notable entries and open cars in the Cup Series this weekend. We only have Jesse Love driving the number 33 for RCR this weekend. All right, let's move on to the weekend schedule for Circuit of the Americas and St. Pete. On Friday at 4 p.m., we have Truck Series practice on Fox Sports 2, followed by Truck Series qualifying on Fox Sports 2. And I hate it when they do this when it comes to there being different series at different tracks, especially with competing networks. They like to run them at the same time, and they're competing against each other. I think this is really stupid. Just gonna go on a quick tangent right here. I personally think it's really stupid when NASCAR decide to do this sort of stuff, whether it's TV or the series itself, because they're cannibalizing themselves when it comes to viewership through practice, qualifying, and then even the Saturday race. Let me get through the rest of the schedule now. O'Reilly Auto Parts Series practice will be on at the exact same time as Truck Series qualifying at 5 p.m. Eastern on the CW app, followed by O'Reilly Series qualifying also on the CW app. And then we move on to Saturday, where we actually have one of the other. I usually don't put other motorsports on the schedule, but since they are sharing the racetrack with the trucks this weekend, I thought it would be appropriate. At 7:30 in the morning, we have the MX5 Cup race number 3 of the season, and that will be on the IMSA YouTube channel. I think it will also be on the Racer Magazine YouTube channel, but don't quote me on that. That's how they were doing it last season. I don't know if they're doing the same thing this year. At 10 a.m., we have Cup Series practice on Prime Video. At 11 a.m., we have Cup Series qualifying also on Prime Video. And then this is where they cannibalize themselves, as at 2 p.m., we have the Only Bulls Green Flag 150 on Fox at St. Pete for the Truck Series. And then at 3 p.m., 1 hour later, we have the Focused Health 250 on the CW, the O'Reilly Series race. And then we'll move on to Sunday at noon. We have the St. Pete Grand Prix for the IndyCar Series. That will be on Fox, the IndyCar season opener. At 3:30 p.m., we have the Duramax Grand Prix on Fox, and that will be, of course, at COTA. And then at 4 p.m., we have the MX5 Cup race number 4, also on the IMSA YouTube channel. Clearly, I'm not a very big fan of the way they schedule these events sometimes when they're at different racetracks, especially if they're competing channels. And I think this is kind of like the second straight week where it's kind of Fox versus CW. I think that's the whole reason why we ended up having the timed race for the Truck Series, is because CW was unwilling to move from their time slot, which is their right. They have deals in place. They don't want to lose viewership, so I get it. I understand. But then to schedule races pretty much at the exact same time when you're going to have the exact same fan base watching those races, a lot of people are going to have to choose between one of the two. Me personally, I'll have one on the TV and then one on my phone, whichever race I'm more into at the time. I'll probably flip-flop one to TV, one to phone, maybe laptop. And I just think it's silly. They're just cannibalizing themselves when it comes to viewership. I think that's a really bad decision on either NASCAR's part or the channel's part. I wouldn't blame it on the tracks because they can shift some stuff around, especially for COTA. They could definitely shift some stuff around. It was planned way ahead of time. They knew this was coming. They knew this was coming. I think it's a really bad error on their part, especially with how hot NASCAR has started the year, not just with the fan base itself, but in pop culture. All right, let me get to. I want to give some thoughts on Circuit of the Americas. I really like this racetrack. It's probably became my favorite road course in the Cup Series. As long as Road America isn't on the schedule, it's going to be my favorite. A lot of you know I'm diehard. I stand on that hill when it comes to Road America. I think Road America is a phenomenal road course, and I think the Cup Series should go back. But nonetheless, I really like Circuit of the Americas. I actually went there last year. I drove out there from Arizona, a very long drive out to Austin, Texas, camped out there for the weekend. Overall, I enjoyed myself. It's a great atmosphere down there, a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of places to see the race. Honestly, turn one might be the best place to sit because you could pretty much view the whole entire racetrack from turn one, and that's pretty unheard of when it comes to a road course. Maybe that's why it was designed the way it was, with the really big hill going up into turn one into the hairpin, and then the hill goes down into the S's. I really like the design of the racetrack. It's a really cool racetrack. I think the new layout that they ran last season really improved the racing. I think the shorter course was definitely a lot better for stock car racing, because I think last year was the best race we've had at Circuit of the Americas so far. And overall, I think every race has been entertaining. Even that first race in the rain was technically entertaining. Was there really any racing? No. Was it a shit show? Yes, but it was still entertaining. Every race there has been entertaining. I like Circuit of the Americas. When I went there last year, you can definitely tell, anybody that's been there knows this. You can tell that the track was built for Formula One. The stands are built completely different. It's a lot fancier. The bathrooms are really nice. I camped there last year. They had showers there that were fantastic. It was overall just a really good experience, and I wish I was going again this year, but unfortunately I'm not made of money. But Circuit of the Americas should be a good race this weekend. A couple of favorites really to keep in mind for this weekend. The hot hand, Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick has finished top 5 in all 5 races at Circuit of the Americas so far. He has a win at Circuit of the Americas in 2023. Reddick is definitely a guy to watch, and he would be the first driver in NASCAR history to win the first 3 races of the NASCAR season. Would be the first time that ever happened, and I can definitely see it. You have to, of course, look at SVG and Connor Zilisch, and I expect these two to probably be battling for the win all day in the O'Reilly Series, battling all day for the win in the Cup Series. Even though Shane, I'd say this was probably his weakest road course last year, Zilisch had a lot of issues, but that's because it was his first ever Cup race. Last year had a lot of issues, but by the time he figured it out, he was running the fastest laps on the track during the race. It was just way too late to compete for a win. So I would definitely watch those two. Chase Elliott has had a lot of success at road courses. He won the first race here. He's had a lot of success at COTA as well. He's ran really well at the racetrack. Alex Bowman, I think Alex Bowman's a very sneaky sort of pick for this weekend. He's done really well at COTA. And then Rowdy. Kyle Busch was probably the best car in the race last year, but as some of you saw, I saw in person and I was heartbroken that he just didn't necessarily have the long run car compared to someone like Christopher Bell. Just really fell off quite a bit once they got on the longer run. So that's something to definitely watch out for as well this weekend for COTA. Now that I've gone through a couple of my favorites, before I finish this up, I do want to give out my picks for the weekend. So here are my weekend picks for COTA and St. Pete. Maybe a little bit of surprise for the trucks. I picked Christian Eckes. Christian Eckes, I think, is a decent road course racer. I'm not going to sit here and say he's one of the best. He might not even be the best road course racer currently in that series. But with his experience over at Colleague, he's probably learned a couple of things from Shane, probably learned a couple of things from AJ. He's probably learned some things. Maybe even Ross has taught him some things. So I think Eckes could be very competitive, and he's going to be my pick to win at St. Petersburg. In the O'Reilly Series, I got Connor Zilisch. I think Connor Zilisch outperformed SVG last year on the road courses in the O'Reilly Series. So he would be my pick to win the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race, but I have SVG probably getting second, and vice versa for the Cup Series race. SVG, I think, just has a little bit more experience in the Cup car than Zilisch, so I think that's going to give him the advantage in the Cup Series race. So Shane Van Gisbergen is my pick to win the Cup Series race at COTA. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Who is your pick to win at COTA for the Cup Series, the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and who's your pick to win in the first ever Craftsman Truck Series race at St. Pete? All right, that will do it for this week's edition of Larry's Trackside Teaser, looking ahead to Circuit of the Americas and, of course, St. Petersburg. Everybody go enjoy the races this weekend. You might have to pull up that picture-in-picture for the Trucks and O'Reilly Series race. Do TVs even do picture-in-picture anymore? I'm not sure. I honestly don't know. I thought that was always a great feature. I don't know if they still do them anymore, but I know I'm going to be watching both races at the same damn time. I'm going to be watching both those races at the same time on Saturday. I like road courses personally. I'm a big fan of road courses. I like them being on the schedule. It shows a lot of skill, and it's also very different. I'm very interested to see how the casuals respond to the road courses after two straight banger of a weekends at Daytona and Atlanta. I'm very interested to see how the casuals, how the new fans react to COTA and St. Petersburg. And then also quick shout out to the IndyCar Series. IndyCar having their season opener this weekend. I'm definitely going to be tuning in for that as well. But let me know your thoughts in the comments about Circuit of the Americas, about St. Pete. Let me know who your picks are in the comments. But for now, I'm Trackside Larry saying peace.